My name is Valerie. I am 28 years old and I just learned the hardest lesson of my life about family and finances. One late weekend afternoon, I casually scrolled through Facebook and stumbled upon a live video that completely shattered my reality. I had recently given my older sister exactly $125,000 to help her secure a beautiful new home. I emptied my hard-earned savings with the sole intention of helping her build a stable life. However, as I watched the screen glowing in my hands, I realized she was throwing a massive housewarming party. The living room was packed with our relatives and her friends holding drinks and cheering. Yet the person who actually funded the entire purchase was deliberately excluded from the guest list. I only found out about this extravagant celebration because she decided to go live on social media to show off the property to the world. She stood there soaking up the applause and taking full credit for a financial achievement she never earned. Exactly 20 minutes after I saw that deceitful post, the initial shock morphed into pure, calculating anger. I decided right then that I would not sit quietly while my sacrifices were hijacked by someone so deeply ungrateful. I grabbed my car keys and the legal documents ready to crash the party and reclaim exactly what belonged to me. Welcome to the Revenge Mode channel. Thank you for tuning in today. If you want to see how I legally dismantled a family member's toxic facade and took back my property, make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay with me until the very end. The glaring blue light from the smartphone screen reflected directly into my eyes, clearly illuminating the bright red live indicator actively broadcasting from my older sister Gwen's social media account. I sat completely motionless on my living room couch, my jaw clenched tight as I watched her position herself strategically right in the center of the densely crowded room. She casually balanced a delicate crystal wine glass in her right hand, exuding a sickening level of confidence, while she delivered a flawless, uninterrupted string of absolute lies directly into the camera lens. Her voice echoed through the small speaker of my device, obnoxiously loud and overflowing with fabricated pride as she addressed both her virtual audience and the physical guests standing around her. Gwen aggressively claimed that she had worked exhausting double shifts day and night for the past several years, completely sacrificing every personal luxury to independently scrape together the massive down payment required to secure this luxurious Ann Arbor property. She spoke passionately about the profound struggles of financial discipline, successfully painting herself as the ultimate modern symbol of hard work and relentless dedication, without showing a single ounce of guilt. The dozens of invited guests surrounding her immediately erupted into enthusiastic applause, raising their assorted drinks high into the air to toast her incredible fabricated success. These relatives and mutual friends were completely captivated by her inspirational tale of financial independence, loudly expressing their admiration for her supposed resilience. They nodded in profound respect and patted her on the shoulder, utterly oblivious to the true origin of the funds that had actually purchased the expensive property they were currently celebrating in. A cold, deeply focused rage instantly replaced my initial wave of disbelief as the sheer calculated audacity of her public performance fully registered in my mind. I did not shed a single tear, nor did I waste a fleeting moment feeling sorry for myself over the blatant betrayal happening on my screen. Instead, I decisively tapped the glowing display to terminate the live broadcast, abruptly cutting off her triumphant laughter and tossed the device onto the sofa cushion. I stood up with absolute, unwavering purpose, my mind already executing the next necessary legal steps, and walked straight into my home office without looking back. I headed directly for the heavy wooden desk sitting in the corner of the room, my movements sharp and completely devoid of any hesitation. I forcefully yanked the bottom filing drawer open, the metal tracks grinding loudly in the quiet space, and reached past the everyday paperwork to grab the secure fireproof folder tucked in the very back. My hands moved with calculated precision as I quickly opened the clasp and carefully extracted the irrefutable physical evidence of my massive financial contribution. I deliberately pulled out the original bank-stamped wire transfer receipts, detailing the exact transaction that had cleared the escrow account just weeks prior. Alongside those undeniable financial slips, I gathered the printed email threads confirming our arrangements and the thick real estate closing file containing the crucial property records. My attorney had explicitly instructed me to guard these specific documents with my life, ensuring I kept a flawless paper trail of the transaction, and I now realized just how vital that professional advice truly was. At precisely 4:30 in the afternoon, I aggressively turned the steering wheel to merge onto the main interstate highway, pressing firmly on the accelerator to head straight toward the upscale real estate subdivision located in suburban Ann Arbor. The vehicle tires hummed steadily against the asphalt as I maintained a constant speed, my mind entirely focused on the impending confrontation and the heavy fireproof folder resting securely on the passenger seat next to me. The physical weight of those legal documents anchored my determination as I mentally prepared to dismantle my sister's carefully constructed public illusion. I reached out to connect my smartphone to the vehicle's hands-free Bluetooth system and immediately dialed the number of my best friend Kara, needing to verify my legal standing before directly facing the unfolding situation. I needed an objective perspective to ensure I was executing this process correctly and not letting my intense anger create a loophole she could exploit. Kara answered on the second ring, and I quickly summarized the ongoing social media live broadcast alongside the precise financial documents I had just pulled from my secure filing cabinet. She listened carefully to the entire infuriating scenario without interrupting, systematically processing the details of the wire transaction and the current unauthorized occupation of the property. After I finished explaining the situation, she confidently affirmed that if every piece of paperwork proving the origin of the funds matched my verbal presentation, my legal rights over the property were exceptionally solid. Kara spoke clearly through the car's surround sound speakers, her voice offering a grounding sense of professional assurance amidst the chaos. If the purchasing documents and the wire transfer receipts are exactly as you say, the current law is completely on your side. I gripped the leather steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white from the applied pressure, and responded with absolute determination. I brought all the absolute proof right here with me. I am not going to let her continue acting out this fraudulent charade for another minute. I terminated the phone call as I navigated the final turns into the quiet residential neighborhood, the sounds of my engine disrupting the suburban stillness. I deliberately parked my vehicle roughly 20 meters away from the property line to avoid immediate detection, shifting the transmission into park and turning off the ignition. As I surveyed the crowded driveway from a distance, I instantly recognized the familiar silver sedan belonging to my mom parked directly on the front lawn near the entrance. A bitter, sickening realization instantly washed over me as the final pieces of this massive family betrayal clicked perfectly into place right before my eyes. Mom was entirely aware of this extravagant housewarming celebration, deliberately choosing to actively participate in the festivities, while simultaneously conspiring with Gwen to keep the entire event a secret from the actual homeowner who paid for everything. The profound sting of double betrayal hardened my resolve, completely erasing any lingering hesitation I might have felt about exposing their lies and ruining the joyous family gathering. I took one deep, steadying breath to calm my racing pulse, firmly clutched the thick file of financial evidence against my chest, and marched decisively up the concrete front steps of the porch to confront them. At exactly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the loud pulsating music vibrating through the house abruptly cut off the moment I pushed the heavy wooden front door wide open to step directly into the living room. The sudden shift in atmosphere was jarring. The previously chaotic, joyful noise vanished instantly, replaced by a suffocating silence that made the air feel thin and pressurized. Dozens of guests, ranging from distant relatives to unfamiliar faces, collectively pivoted their heads toward the entryway, their expressions shifting from festive confusion to wary discomfort as they processed my unannounced, tense arrival. Gwen was positioned near the grand staircase, still holding her smartphone in a way that suggested she had not yet officially terminated the digital broadcast. She visibly stiffened her posture, shifting from graceful composure to rigid panic, though she quickly attempted to mask the sudden terror by slapping on a performance of forced, exaggerated delight. She glided across the polished hardwood floor toward me, her eyes darting nervously toward the camera lens before settling on my face with a look of desperate, calculated manipulation. "Oh, little sister, why on earth are you showing up so unexpectedly like this?" Gwen asked, her voice cracking slightly as she tried to force a thin, insincere smile. "I was actually planning to organize a special surprise for you right after the party officially wound down." I stood my ground, my posture stiff, and my eyes locked onto hers, feeling absolutely no empathy for the crumbling facade she was struggling to maintain. I ignored the theater she was putting on for her followers and answered her with a tone cold enough to cut through the tension in the room. "A surprise, really?" I countered, my voice echoing clearly across the vacant space. "Is the surprise that you decided to use my money to purchase this house and then threw an extravagant party to lie to everyone about your financial success?" Before Gwen could formulate a response to defend her blatant deception, Mom frantically scurried across the room, her face pale and etched with visible concern for the disaster unfolding. She reached out and gripped my forearm with a surprisingly tight, trembling hand, attempting to pull me forcefully toward the kitchen area to shield the scene from the prying eyes of the guests. "Valerie, stop this right now." Mom hissed, her voice a desperate, frantic whisper as she tugged at my sleeve. "Don't you dare ruin your sister's special day in front of all these people. Just come with me into the kitchen so we can talk about this like a normal family." I did not flinch, nor did I allow myself to be swayed by the familiar emotional guilt she was desperately trying to trigger. I forcefully yanked my arm back, successfully breaking her frantic, desperate grip, and stood firmly in place. I tightened my hold on the heavy file of evidence tucked under my arm and marched back toward the center of the room. I needed to ensure that every single person present understood exactly who held the legal authority here. I looked past Gwen's trembling form to scan the room, ensuring the guests understood that the narrative they had just consumed for the last hour was a total fabrication. I was ready to dismantle her lies piece by piece. At 5:15 in the afternoon, I forcefully splayed the thick file across the glass surface of the living room coffee table, firmly placing each document of financial verification directly into the line of sight of every person standing in the room. I retrieved the official bank statements featuring the embossed red seal, clearly displaying the chronological trail of the $125,000 that had been transferred directly from my personal savings account into the escrow fund. Following the statements, I produced the final, most consequential page of the legal binder, holding the original warranty deed high so that every pair of eyes in the room was forced to confront the reality of the situation. I announced with unwavering clarity that the name appearing as the sole legal owner on this official property document was exclusively mine, with absolutely no mention of Gwen's name in any capacity. The room seemed to shrink as the weight of my revelation settled over the guests, transforming their earlier admiration into a thick, uncomfortable confusion. "Look closely at this," I said, tapping my fingernail firmly against the section of the document verifying the title. "The sole legal owner listed on this purchase contract is me. There is no mortgage loan, and this property is entirely my private asset." Mom erupted into desperate, jagged sobs, reaching out her hands as if to beg for an intervention that would never come. "Please, I am begging you, do not humiliate your sister in front of all these people anymore. Let us just shut the doors and resolve this as a family." I stood motionless, completely ignoring Mom's emotional appeal and her attempt to force a private settlement. I refused to let her sentimentality shield Gwen from the consequences of this elaborate deception. I turned toward the crowd, my voice calm but authoritative enough to command the immediate attention of everyone lingering in the space. I calmly informed them that the gathering was officially concluded, and that I no longer authorized anyone to continue occupying my private residence. I did not need to raise my voice or resort to aggressive shouting. The sheer finality in my tone was enough to communicate the gravity of the situation. The guests began to shift uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with both me and Gwen as they realized the magnitude of the fraud they had unknowingly endorsed. Slowly, one by one, individuals started to retrieve their belongings, murmuring awkward apologies as they navigated toward the exit. The grand housewarming celebration dissolved into a hurried, silent evacuation, leaving Gwen isolated in the center of the vast, hollow living room. I watched them go with complete indifference, my focus remaining entirely on reclaiming the space I had financed. Once the final guest had retreated through the front door, the silence that returned to the house was no longer suffocating, but rather a reflection of the control I had finally managed to wrestle back. Early Monday morning, my attorney officially dispatched a formal notice to vacate to the Ann Arbor property address, marking the definitive commencement of the legal recovery process. This formal document explicitly demanded that Gwen remove all her personal belongings and vacate the premises within the time frame mandated by Michigan state statutes. The document served as a cold, bureaucratic final warning, stripping away any remaining ambiguity regarding her unauthorized residency within my private estate. Almost immediately after the certified mail was delivered, Mom began relentlessly calling my personal number, deploying a barrage of psychological manipulation and emotional appeals to pressure me into dropping the legal action. She weaponized our shared history and familial expectations, attempting to force me into a position of guilt where I would prioritize her comfort over my own financial security. "Are you truly intending to cast your own flesh and blood out onto the streets?" Mom shrieked through the phone speaker, her voice trembling with an artificial desperation. "I cannot believe you have become this cold-blooded and ruthless toward your own kin." I countered her emotional onslaught with a flat, unwavering tone that acknowledged none of her accusations. "The decision is already final. From this moment forward, please direct every single family-related communication through my retained legal counsel." Recognizing the gravity of the legal situation, Gwen finally began to spiral into a state of panic, desperately reaching out to various local banking institutions in a frantic attempt to secure a mortgage loan. She hoped to leverage the property's equity to buy me out, effectively cleaning her own slate while keeping the house under her control. However, every single one of her desperate efforts ended in total failure because her financial history was abysmal and her poor credit score rendered her a high-risk candidate that no institutional lender was willing to finance. I maintained a stance of absolute deafening silence, blocking every individual attempt at contact from my family members and instructing my law firm to handle every aspect of the litigation. I retreated into a period of disciplined detachment, refusing to engage with the frantic messages or the desperate threats sent to my inbox. The countdown initiated by the legal system began to run its course, systematically dismantling every delusional hope Gwen held for a convenient settlement or an act of impulsive mercy. I remained focused on the upcoming court procedures, waiting for the legal mechanism to complete its work and restore my property rights, without further emotional interference from those who had orchestrated this deceit. Several weeks passed since Gwen adamantly ignored the initial legal notices, eventually compelling the presiding judge to authorize the final court order for a mandatory eviction. Once the official writ of eviction received final judicial approval from the county court, the local sheriff's department was promptly dispatched to the property to execute the recovery of my residence. I stood positioned on the sidewalk alongside my retained attorney, observing the process with a calculated, quiet intensity as the officers approached the front entrance to carry out the court's binding directive. The leading officer pounded firmly on the wood of the door, his voice booming with official authority as he addressed the occupants inside. You have exactly 15 minutes to gather your essential personal belongings and vacate this property immediately, according to the court's eviction order. Gwen slowly emerged through the entryway a few moments later, clutching a handful of scattered possessions with a look of pure, unadulterated venom directed at my position. As she walked past me toward the waiting vehicle, she spat her words out through gritted teeth, her expression twisted into a mask of pure hatred. You are going to regret everything you have done to me today, and I swear I will never forgive you for this. I remained completely indifferent, not even dignifying her empty threats with a response, while under the vigilant supervision of the law enforcement officers, Gwen was forced to consolidate her chaotic pile of personal items into cheap black plastic bags. She haphazardly stuffed her clothes and random trinkets into the bags, tossing them into the back of a rented moving truck that looked as dilapidated as her current financial situation. Mom lingered beside the moving vehicle, her face flushed with a furious indignation as she directed a continuous stream of vocal vitriol toward me from the curb. She screamed insults and invoked curses, hoping to shame me into some form of reactive outburst, but I simply maintained my gaze with a frozen, detached stillness. I did not blink. I did not argue. And I certainly did not display any fragment of internal emotional disruption that she could leverage against me. The moment Gwen and Mom finally exited the property line, I felt a heavy, crushing weight lift from my shoulders, signaling the end of their forced occupation. I approached the lead officer to formally accept the return of my house keys, a small but significant piece of metal that represented my complete restoration of control. I immediately utilized my smartphone to contact a professional locksmith service, demanding they arrive within the hour to replace every single locking mechanism on the exterior doors, to ensure no one from that toxic circle could ever gain entry again. The heavy thud of the new deadbolts sliding into place served as the final punctuation mark on this entire traumatic chapter, granting me the absolute silence and privacy I had been denied for far too long. 6 months after that exhausting period of legal battles and property recovery, the suburban house in Ann Arbor finally closed escrow and officially transferred ownership to a new buyer. The sale of the property proceeded with remarkable efficiency because I wanted to liquidate the asset as quickly as possible to put the entire ordeal behind me. I successfully recovered my initial capital investment of $125,000, along with a modest profit margin accumulated from the recent real estate market appreciation in the area. I transferred the total sum into a secure long-term investment fund that remains completely inaccessible to anyone else, effectively shielding my future financial stability from further interference. I officially terminated every existing method of communication with the individuals who once represented my family, choosing to prioritize my own mental health over the toxic obligations of shared bloodlines. Looking back at the entire experience, I have gathered 2 critical lessons that I hope will serve as a warning to anyone currently finding themselves in a similar, vulnerable position. The first lesson is that extending kindness toward toxic relatives often creates an opening for them to exploit your resources without any regard for your well-being, so you must avoid the trap of thinking your money can fix their character flaws. My second lesson is that biological ties offer zero protection compared to the absolute clarity provided by transparent legal documents and professional agreements, because contracts remain your only true shield when people you once loved turn against you. I appreciate you accompanying me through this turbulent journey on the Revenge Mode channel and listening to my story until the very final moment. I sincerely hope that my decision to firmly reclaim my life provides the necessary encouragement for those of you who currently feel trapped or manipulated by people within your own circle. Please share your own perspectives or experiences in the comments section below, and remember to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any upcoming content.